let me introduce myself, just in case you guys are not aware of who I am and what I do. My name is Sonal, and I have a YouTube channel where I share keto recipes, keto lifestyle. And since I'm a diabetic, I've been following this lifestyle because it works well for diabetics to keep their sugar levels under control. But my what I really wanted, or what my aim was for this course, is to actually reach people out who are struggling to get information which is applicable to Indian diets and Indian lifestyle, because there is a lot of research that is available, but it is all done in the US and in Western countries, and a lot of those ingredients or superfoods, whatever they call it, are not available in India, and it confuses us. It doesn't fit in our lifestyle, and metabolic diseases are the base of a lot of issues: inflammation, metabolic diseases. And I wanted to design a diet that is practical. There are just very few simple changes that you need to make to follow it, and as well as applicable to our culture and food habits. Quickly give you a short this. I was doing keto for about 4 years or so. It is a great diet, especially because it eliminates a lot of inflammatory foods. It gives you an idea of what is good and bad. It tells you the fats that are good for you. It tells you the sweeteners that you should be using. So a lot of times people stop eating sugar and they shift to jaggery or honey, and the fact behind it is that there isn't much difference in that. And then there is this Splenda, which has been marketed and sold very freely in India. So people have shifted to that, and that again is not a very healthy alternative. So that is the reason I think keto has a lot of value, because it made it very, very easy and simple for people to understand what are exactly the good foods. Now, there is a certain balance in which you need to eat all of these macronutrients when you're doing keto. That balance may be something that Indians may not be able to do. And especially, it is extremely difficult to do it in the long run. And that is the reason to include a lot more carbs and healthy carbs. And this is what my diet that I design or I talk about is going to be about. So let me first of all again apologize for the technical difficulty, because this was supposed to run on a particular platform that it didn't. But I'm going to get that corrected. I am going to also put up the presentation there so you can download it and take a look at it. I may share resources there. So we will have to work on that platform eventually, because that is a much more organized platform. But for today, let's take the session here. So today's session is, I started off with a short personal story. I didn't want to go too much in detail. I may do that in other sessions, but today, people may be in a time crunch. So the next thing that I want to talk about is food and nutrition. Then I'm going to explain metabolism and productivity, what I mean by productivity, and certain hacks. Then insulin and blood sugar and what that means and how they work together. And there's another device that I'm going to talk about, and you may or may not be interested. So, we can not discuss that, but that is something I recommend. So I will talk about that. In my personal story, I started doing keto for 4 years. Like I said, there was a very clear, there were very clear guidelines as to what is healthy and unhealthy, and I agree with most of them. So that was the good thing. But what I was looking for was to increase my insulin sensitivity or lower my blood sugars. And that did not happen unless I didn't eat carbs. So if I ate even a little bit of carbs, I saw my sugar reacting much more than what it was reacting earlier. And that did not work for me. Also, it is a high fat diet, keto, which sometimes people do not process well, which I feel very unhealthy with eating high fat. So, I don't digest it well and I feel uncomfortable. So we need to understand, when we are looking at diets, that every body is different. And when any new diet comes in the market, the people who are talking about it and the success of it, they speak as if, if you do this, all your problems are going to go away, which is almost impossible, because every body is different and every body has a different requirement. It processes foods differently, it absorbs nutrients differently, and there is a little part of genes. So genes are playing certain part in it, and you have to look at it holistically. You have to be very observant about what is working for you. which is what I observed about myself. And I realized that this is not going to work for me as a lifestyle as well as a diet in the long run. And a diet needs to be a lifestyle. Otherwise, as soon as you change it, all of your problems come back. Whatever you thought that you had corrected, everything comes back. So it's of no use if you do this temporary approach. It was extremely repetitive because it's a high protein. I wouldn't say a high protein, it's a moderate protein diet. But the choices you have in protein in India are very limited. So your foods become very repetitive. And if you're a person who can live with it, if you have those kind of mental control, that kind of control, then it's great for you. But I found it very restrictive and repetitive for the next 40, 50 years, whatever I assume or would love to live for healthily. It's difficult to fit in your social lifestyle. That became a problem. Going out, everybody would be like, oh, you're not going to eat this and you're not going to eat that. So that was not a pleasant experience in the long run. So let me quickly talk about food and nutrition. And if you have attended my yesterday's webinar, you know that I took this point up. People have been brainwashed into thinking that calories matter, and if you eat a lot of calories and if you don't burn them, then you put on weight. And this seems to be like a formula kind of thing, which if you think intuitively, you will know that life is not as simple and plain and flat, right? There is a lot more that goes into this. So the way you store your fat is different. Every human being has a different body type. So even with the same weight, everybody looks different, every body looks different. The reason being that there are so many other things, the kind of enzymes that you have in your body, the gut bacteria that is helping you digest that food, and also how you're storing it depending on what your physical state is at that point, and hormones, and whether you're a female or a male, how much muscle you have. So all of those things go into doing this. So just that basic calculation itself, there itself, I think is wrong. It's very, plain Jane to explain something this big. And if it was working, then nobody would have obesity and lifestyle diseases in this day and age, because we have had this knowledge for years now. The reason we have all of these diseases is because this approach isn't working. So what is the right approach is what we are going to come to, but I still want to quickly talk about why calories don't make sense. So, people compare a cookie and broccoli. So if you have 100 calories of a cookie and 100 calories of broccoli, and I would add one more thing is 100 calories of wood. We all know that calorie is energy, and wood has calories too. If you burn it, it has energy. And so if you were to consume 3 of these things, you could make powder of wood and you could eat it. And if you digest it, are you going to put on the same kind of weight? Are you going to get the same kind of energy and the nutrition that you would get from broccoli and a cookie? And it's obviously not true, right? So there itself, you know that each calorie is different. So let's get wood out of the way because it's an absurd example. We wouldn't eat it. But let's compare a cookie and broccoli. So when you eat a cookie, it gives you sugar, and sugar definitely is converted into energy. You get an energy rush and your sugar will fall down immediately. Other than that, bout of energy, you don't get any other nutrition from that. But when you eat broccoli, first of all, 100 calorie of broccoli is going to be much more filling because it's full of fiber. It is full of nutrition, and nutrition and fiber both will fill you up, and it will give you energy, which is also very slowly released. So you don't get that high that a cookie gives you and then a sudden low, but you get a gradual release of energy. And that is how you can compare foods. They should definitely not be compared on the basis of calories. So let's go to the next point here. So let me talk about what all of these, vitamins and minerals mean. So vitamins are organic compounds. That means it comes from organic matter, living matter, and they support the growth and development of our body, whether it is cells and all of that. And they have a lot of other functions, but that is the basic thing. Now, minerals are generally like 4% of our body mass is minerals, and our bones and teeth are made of these minerals. Even the cells and the tissue composition, they're also, I think, they help in the nerve fibers and a lot of other things. So these 2 things are essential to us. Some of them are non-essential, but vitamins and minerals, there are certain that are essential, and we need to make sure that we are getting it through our food. The next thing that is there is fat. So fat is mainly used for energy, but fat also helps in brain function. So to keep your brain healthy, joints, and for hormones. So it has a very important role in our body. We cannot go on a low fat diet and have a completely holistically healthy lifestyle. So fat should not be completely eliminated. You have to make sure that you're eating the good fats that are helping you in some way or the other. Then there is protein, which helps in building and repair. So whatever tissue damage is happening, whatever is happening on a daily basis, cells are broken down, the walls are broken down, a lot of things are eliminated, and protein helps build all of this back up. Carbs are something that give you energy. Your brain as well as your body uses it for energy, and it gives you a sudden or a, instant energy is what you would call it. Fiber is something that helps in digestion. It keeps your gut healthy, and digestion and gut is among the most important things, because if you're digesting the food well, only then will you absorb it well. So even if you're eating the most healthy foods, and if you're not digesting well, your body is not going to be able to absorb them well, and it's like buying some expensive foods and throwing them down the toilet. So we all need to focus on our digestion and have a comfortable and healthy digestion. If you have any concerns, like if you feel you have bloating, you have gas, you have to know that you need to make some changes in your diet to adjust it to where your food becomes comfortable for you. You shouldn't be eating food and feeling tired, or you would slow down a bit, because that's very natural. Like if you've seen a tiger, if it eats an animal, when it's hungry, it's very alert, and it will find an animal, eat it, and then rest for a couple of days. So that is normal. Slowing down to a certain extent is normal, but you shouldn't feel completely sluggish and like you're spending a lot of your energy on digestion. If that is happening, then you need to change your food choices, is something I would recommend. Yeah, and then there is this thing, the small, big, whatever you call it, supplements, because our body has evolved in certain ways, and our lifestyle has suddenly changed in certain ways, and because of that, there are certain supplements that we need, and almost everybody is deficient in those supplements, and taking those regularly is definitely going to help you. There are only two supplements that I'm going to recommend for sure, and so it doesn't make sense to make you guys wait for it. It's vitamin D and vitamin C. These are two that almost everybody needs to take. And vitamin D, you might have heard, because most people who get themselves checked, like if you take a blood test, you will see that almost everybody is deficient in vitamin D. The reason being that we don't go out as much. We are sitting in our cabins and either working or we are indoors. And every time we go out, we are very careful to not be in the sun. And sun exposure is important. Even if we get exposed to sun, it is for a short time, and we are covered to a great extent. So that's another reason that our lifestyle has completely changed, and we have become deficient in these vitamins. Vitamin C is something that we do not make on our own. Unfortunately, we need to take it or consume it, and it does not get stored. So like vitamin D, you might know that even one of that 60,000 IU tablet, gel cap, if you take that, you can probably go for a month with that. So it's one of the easiest things to take. I would recommend everybody to take it. And but with vitamin C, it is something that you need to take very, very often. So even during the day, it doesn't store in your body. It will just pass out if there's any extra. So the best way to do is to take a vitamin C saline or so tablet, put it in water, and then you sip on that water throughout the day. And you can take like 7 a day. And the more you take, your immunity will improve, your skin will improve, your hair will improve, so many other things. You will feel great. You will just feel great with vitamin C. So these are two things. Let me, get them out of the way.
Yeah, so vitamin D, basically, I have a deficiency, and I've got two theories by two of the leading docs. Okay, so the diabetologist says just take it once a month, but the cardiovascular basically says take it every alternate day for 1 month, and then basically do it, once a month. And the diabetic says take it for 3 months, once a month, and then once in 6 months. And it's D-rise. So do you, as opposed to shots?
Yeah, it's a very basic, yeah, D3, D-rise. That's the problem. Now, when two doctors are giving you two opposite opinions, then you have
No,
to
what's
choose.
your view? What's your view, basically?
Correct. So, I go with my favorite doctor and I do that. So, you have, so basically when you're deficient in vitamin D, you should take it every week till you come to a point where you're no more deficient. Once you're not deficient in it, you can take it every month and maintain your D levels. But taking it once in 6 months is probably not going to help you maintain the levels either. Now your vitamin levels are low, so you take one every week for a month, which is normally going to bring you to a regular level. And then onwards, you have to maintain it by taking once a month. One of your doctors said take it once in 6 months. I think that will not be enough to maintain your D levels in a normal range. So once a month is required for everybody. And as you get older, you will process D, you will make less of vitamin D. So you have to be very careful. Even as a diabetic or anybody with metabolic disease, vitamin D is extremely important. Vitamin D also helps you raise your calcium levels. So a lot of people start taking calcium supplements, but if you just have good vitamin D levels, sometimes you will not need calcium supplements. So that is that. So when I'm talking about metabolism, I mean mainly sugar and carb metabolism, because that is what wrecks your metabolism and that is what makes you insulin resistant and gives you metabolic disease, and as well as it makes you fat, unhealthy, and all of those things. It will store fat around your organs and make the whole of your body inefficient. So every organ will get affected by a bad metabolism. So how does it work? Basically, whatever sugar that you use, whatever sugar, and when I say sugar, it means any kind of carbs, because all of these carbs almost affect you similarly. It's just that if you are taking carbs with fiber, the combination of carbs and fiber will lower the glycemic index of the food. So do you guys, if you're not aware of, and I think most people are not aware of glycemic index, so let me just explain what glycemic index is. So when you eat a food, how quickly your sugar rises or how quickly your body reacts to it on the sugar level is how high the food is on the glycemic index. So I hope that is clear. So for example, the same example of a cookie and a broccoli, the cookie has a much higher glycemic index than broccoli. Even if you take equal amount of carbs in the two of them, the cookie will raise your sugar immediately, and broccoli won't. It will be a milder and a gradual increase. That is the difference. Now, what happens when you eat a cookie is you get the same amount of carbs, but because you have eaten a high glycemic index food, your body will react by making a bulk of insulin, because insulin is the hormone which controls sugar or helps you use the sugar efficiently. So now yeah, just a minute. So now your body has made a lot of insulin and it gets rid of the sugar. At that time, it will either digest it, put it in the cells for them to use it as energy, or whatever is extra. I hope you guys know the whole process. So your body will use whatever sugar it needs for energy. Whatever it thinks is extra will go into your liver and it will be stored as glycogen. So in the sense, you can compare this to the food that you bring home. So whatever food you have that day, you'll cook it and eat some, and whatever is left, you put it in the refrigerator. So your liver is like that. You put the food in the refrigerator, you put the sugar in your liver. Now there will still be some leftover food which you know that you're not going to need in the near future, and that is the food you put it in the freezer. And similarly, insulin will put, or the liver will put all of the extra sugar and store it as fat. And that is the reason you don't want to eat sugar, because sugar is directly metabolized and stored as fat rather than fat. Fats are not what is making you fat, but sugar is. Now, in this process, what you also understand is the main I won't say culprit, it is also a blessing, because people like me who are diabetics, for us it's a blessing. But insulin also becomes the culprit. If you have a lot of insulin in your blood, you will store more fat. That is how it is. In the absence of insulin, you're not going to store that fat, those carbs as fat. So after you have eaten the cookie, what has happened is the reaction of your body was to make a lot of insulin, and now you're left with some insulin in your body, and that actually crashes your sugar suddenly, and your blood sugar goes down, and you're again craving for carbs. And that is the reason you will see that people who depend majorly on carb heavy foods, unfortunately a lot of Indians are vegetarians, and the composition of our food plate is such that we have a lot of carbs in our meals. Even I mean, I've seen regular Indian food in that if you have vegetables, even those vegetables have potatoes, and then there is dal which has certain amount of carbs, and there's beans which have certain amount of carbs, and actually I'm supportive of dal and beans. But now all of this you're eating with a roti or rice, so you have pure carbs and you have carbs in most of these foods, so it becomes completely carb heavy, and you're not getting as much nutrition. And that is the reason I used to always wonder and discuss with my husband is I mean, going tangentially, so let me just come back to this. So you are left with a bunch of insulin in your blood, and you're craving for carbs. So you'll see that people who are vegetarians, especially, and eat, mainly vegetarian food, they need snacks. They will be, after a few hours, they want to grab something. And people who eat a good amount of meat will agree with me. If you have that experience, you'll agree with me that the day you eat a meat heavy meal, like if you've eaten a mutton curry or something like that, most of us non-vegetarians had this tradition at home that we would have like a light meal in the night. If you had a heavy, high protein, high fat meal, you will have a light meal in the night. Because although you may say that the calories are the same, a lot of other things are same, the carb content is very different, and fats and proteins are much more satiating than carbs are. Carbs will keep you hungry, and that is the reason to cut down on carbs. So when I say people need to go on low carb, people think it's a fad, or keto is a fad, but the reason is that you will keep eating carbs, and the more often you eat carbs, the more insulin you'll make. The more insulin you make, you are in this cycle of storing fat and craving for food, and you're just consuming a lot of food. So having said that, let me look at the next point. So I hope, like the carb part is clear. So let me talk about, do we need carbs at all? And we definitely need carbs, because carbs are something that are the fuel to our body and to our brain. But the thing is, what we call carbs is rice, rotis, and millets and all of that. But we don't realize that there is a lot of carbs even in vegetables. There is rice, there is dals, there's beans, vegetables, all of these have carbs. So we can just derive or get our carbs from that, rather than eating a separate source of pure refined carbs. So this is what I want people to avoid, is eating refined carbs. And unfortunately, even whole wheat flour is refined carbs. Anything that comes from a factory is refined carbs, because if you buy it as a whole grain, you're not going to be able to consume it. And there itself, you know that probably as an ancient man, you were not able to consume it. There were no probably pressure cookers at the time or so, where you could even bring it to a point where you could consume this food. And we all need to kind of go back to where we came from. The reason being, we are all suffering from lifestyle diseases. And for those of you who attended yesterday's class, this could be a repeat, but lifestyle diseases are not the disease because there's a problem with your body, but there's a problem with your lifestyle. Your body has evolved over millions of years, and it is evolved in a situation of scarcity. So it is, trying to actually put on weight and, store fat. It has been trained to do that because there used to be famine, and there used to be times when you could get food, but that too wasn't enough. There was no refrigerator, there was no stored food, there was no, easily farmed grains. So if you found food, you are supposed to overeat and store it as fat. And our body continues to do that because we haven't got enough time to evolve. If anybody knows how long evolution takes, it takes millions of years to change yourself. So even, there are some dietitians, they will say certain things like, I've grown up eating this, so, I digest it better. And it's always better to stick to what you have been eating since you were a child. But that's not how it works, because your body will not adapt to it that well, that quickly. There are certain things that happen that, yeah, your gut bacteria will adjust to it and it will start digesting it to a certain extent, but not your whole body. So certain things are still going to be wrong for you. Eating often is going to be wrong for you because the ancient man wasn't doing that. He wasn't able to do that. So don't do that to yourself. And if it is a choice, if it is keeping you happy and healthy, go for it. But if you have any lifestyle diseases and you are considering fasting or intermittent fasting, you should, because people feel and people tell me that I can never fast. This is something I can never do. I can't go without food. It's not doable for me. I feel faint. I feel this, that. But the crux of the matter is that if you're suffering from any extra fat or overweight or fat anywhere on your body, you should not faint. Why would you faint? Because you have stored that fat to be used for some reason, for some day, some rainy day when there is no food. I mean, your body is much more evolved than you are, your mind and your logic is. And your body knows that it has stored the fat so that you can use it. Now you need to dip into that and start using it. If you keep feeding your body every day while you have stored food inside of you, it is very counterintuitive. Fat is actually stored food, so use it, give it a break and use it. So I am a complete supporter of intermittent fasting and fasting, and I'm going to talk about it in detail later. But this is just touching upon it to a certain extent. So is keto healthy and sustainable is something I had written here, but like I said, it is fairly healthy. But certain, like people have cleared their skin, they have had a lot of their reproductive problems cured by this. People have seen better sugars because it eliminates carbs almost completely. So you will see that. But does it go to the crux of the problem and does it clear your cells and detoxify them? That I still doubt, and especially in my case it did not work. So this session is for people who cannot do it in the long run. People who can, I think, have enough knowledge on their own to continue that, and they're managing very well. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is I just wanted to introduce what blue zones are. So blue zones are those areas in the world where there are most number of centenarians, so most number of people who live beyond the age of 100. And a lot of study and research happens on those people and their lifestyles, and those zones are now named as blue zones. And doctors and researchers among themselves and even to us will call them blue zones. And I am trying to base a lot of my recommendations on what research happens in the blue zones. We definitely want to cure ourselves of any diseases currently. We want to avoid any diseases that could come in the future, as well as we want to make sure that whatever life we live, we want to be in our healthiest form. So not in a vegetative state, or you have dementia, or some of those things, because we are seeing that very often happening now, that the rate of those diseases has increased. And I feel that um, I'm sure everybody agrees that that is the quality of life is not something that you would wish. If you were to live long enough, then a lot of people will say that I'd rather die before that. And that's not a choice we have. So the choice we have probably is to change our lifestyle in a direction where if we live long enough, we have a healthier life. I'm just going to peep into the chat now. Also, these doctors that I follow, like I said, who study the blue zones and base their recommendations on that and the research that is done in those blue zones, they talk about having good metabolic health. And good metabolic health, according to them, is when you eat as well as when you don't eat, you don't crash. So you have a constant supply of energy also at the time when you're not eating. That is good metabolic health. If you're completely dependent on food and carbs, that shows that your metabolism is poor. And this is not the same metabolism where you're talking about burning calories, but this is the metabolism where you're talking about not being able to use everything that is available to you as energy. You want to make sure that you can survive with or without a constant supply of energy. So this is what you should strive to get, and there is a reason behind it, which is a very interesting reason that not many people talk about. But in the recent times, please let me know if you think this session is going too long, because we can definitely do this some other time. And I had a question about the timings of the session. I'm unfortunately, not many people joined the session. I wanted to get an idea from you. So before I let me just talk about the timings of the session. Can you type in chat whether you would like to finish the whole course in a shorter period of time, because I feel like that is a concern. It goes on for one whole month. So should we try to do like 1.5 hour sessions, thrice a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because that will also continue, that will keep a continuity, and whatever I'm speaking, that'll keep it fresh. Also, I feel like 1 hour sometimes can be too short. So let me know your opinion in the chat box. Also, most of the people joining are Indian, so I realize that there is Ganpati coming, and this session is clashing with that time. So if you, I would personally prefer to kind of do these sessions, longer and quicker. But I would like to know your opinion. So put that in the chat. Let me talk about what I was talking about. So metabolic health. In the recent times, people spoke about keto and ketones. Probably you have heard of that. So ketone bodies are made by your body using fat. And these ketone bodies actually can power your body as well as your brain. So when you're not eating carbs, your body runs on ketones. So people who are on a ketogenic diet have a have ketones in their blood. I didn't want to say high level of ketones, because then that is called ketoacidosis, which is a dangerous condition, but they have a higher level of ketones. And people who are eating a regular meal with carbs, they do not. Now, in the times when keto came into existence or became popular, people started saying that ketones were the most ideal energy source of energy for the brain. Like the brain prefers ketones, and which now has been proven that that's not really true. The brain prefers to use carbs, but ketones are the, what do you say, like the body and the brain falls back on ketones in the absence of food. And that is the metabolic flexibility that we are talking about, that the ancient man needed to have. So when there was no food, ketones were made from fat and you used it for energy. Now today, since we have food, is ketone important, and does it have any value in today's day and age? That is the question. So this interesting idea and research was presented by, like I said, my favorite doctor, Dr. Gundry. You guys can follow him. He's on YouTube. He's written some of the best-selling books, and I've read his books, and I absolutely admire the man. So what he pointed out is that when you sleep in the night, your brain has used up all of the carbs that it has sometimes, and there is a fear that it could be starving if you are not able to tap into your fat and make ketones out of it. A lot of times you could have a lot of stored sugar and you could use it, but that is another reason why you need to keep metabolic flexibility, so that your brain never starves. And if your brain is in a starving state, then you could be harming it in the long run with bringing in these diseases. So your brain should not be getting too much sugar, as well as it should not be getting zero carbs. For that reason, metabolic flexibility is important, and for many other reasons where it comes to health. Another point that I wanted to clear out, which is a very simple point, is about fasting and intermittent fasting. There are two types of fasts. People do a long-term fast, which is 3 days, to even there is somebody who has done it for a whole year. And this can be done. This can be done only by people who have a fair amount of body fat. So if you have low body fat percentage, you should not be trying any kind of fasting. And there's another thing that is called intermittent fasting, which I do more often. I have tried the long-term fast, but again, as I hear that they have seen in some research that people who went on long-term fast in this day and age does not work well, because your body starts detoxifying too quickly, and all of the toxins start coming into your blood, and you get sort of like your blood becomes toxic, and your liver is not able to clear them out soon enough, and you might get reactions because of that. So it's better to do an intermittent fast, which is a shorter term fast where you're gradually detoxifying your body, and which is always, again, better for most of the population to do anything that is gradual and baby steps. So that is what I would recommend, and as I said, I'll talk about it in more detail later. And I also wanted to talk about CGMS. And before I talk about CS, so CGMS is um, CGMS is a device which helps you check your blood sugar. So if you know that a lot of you've seen diabetics will prick themselves in the finger and check their blood sugar with a glucometer. And these days there is a new device called a CGMS. Unfortunately, it cannot be seen. I'll show you in the next class on my hand. It stays on your hand for about 13 days. Every 13 days you have to change it. And what it does is it gives you a graph of where your blood sugars have been throughout the night as well as the day. So you don't have to, first of all, prick yourself. And the other thing is, if you're not awake in the night, it's not that you don't know your blood sugars. So I would recommend this for people who have borderline diabetes, or they are pre-diabetic, as well as people who are diabetics. What you can do with this is, this data helps you see where your sugars are going at what time. So whether your fasting itself is high, is it climbing up after 3 a.m. in the morning, which is a common thing with a lot of people with metabolic disease. You start getting high fasting sugars, and all night your sugars have been fine and they start creeping up. So if you have more clarity about how this is working, you can also track down what foods you have eaten and they are affecting you badly. Because although there is a general rule as to how carbs affect your sugars, but people do not understand that every carb affects each person differently, basically depending on how they digest it, what enzymes they have, insulin, how much insulin they have in their body, as well as sometimes you are sensitive to certain foods. So when you're sensitive to a food, it will give a reaction where your body will not digest it well, and you will get a spike in the sugar. So I would advise people to get this device for at least 15 days, or a couple of times, like couple of devices, one after the other. Write down all the foods they are eating, check their sugars, compare it, and decide what works for you and what doesn't. And this is the best way to sort of keep your metabolic health well, just knowing what foods are good for you. So that is the CGMS device. I wanted to introduce it, and I don't want to talk too much about it later. So I introduce certain things so that if any of you is interested in it, you can definitely bring it up and we can talk a little more about how we can use this better. But this is just touching certain topics. The last two things that I wanted to talk about, because somebody also spoke about being a pre-diabetic. It's very important to change your lifestyle right away, because it is completely doable or controllable at this point as compared to later. You can still do it later, but it's just that you don't want to be called a diabetic, because it will break your confidence to a certain extent. But if the doctors are saying that the only way out is medicines, then that is wrong. It can definitely change. But those of you who do not know that they are pre-diabetic, for those people, I would recommend doing a fasting insulin test. Unfortunately, 90% of the endocrinologists or diabetologists also do not suggest this test. But this test will tell you, sometimes even 5 to 10 years in advance, that you're going to be a diabetic soon if you continue with this lifestyle. So what it tells you is that when you're not eating anything in the morning, how much insulin is there in your blood. And if your insulin levels at that point are higher than 10 or close to 10, you have to know that you're developing insulin resistance. and you are developing a metabolic disease. And knowing this beforehand really helps, because then if you make the change earlier, you will get better results. So I hope, I mean, I wasn't confusing about what this fasting insulin is. Let me just explain it with one more point. The point here is that you have slept and you haven't eaten anything all night. And what happens is, when you're trying to wake up, your body starts putting some sugar into your blood so that you have energy to get up and move. Otherwise, you would crash if you had no energy in the morning and no sugar in your blood. So when your body puts this sugar in the blood, your body also starts making insulin. Now, at that time, how much insulin are you needing to control that sugar shows that if your insulin at that time is low, you're very healthy metabolically. If you're getting high insulin levels at that point, it means that your body is not using your insulin efficiently, and it is needing more and more to manage the same sugar, which is hardly anything because you were sleeping all night. So this is the knowledge that we need to have beforehand. And I have no idea why only some of the most modern and progressive doctors talk about this test. But if you go and talk even to the diabetologists and specialists in this field, they don't talk about this test. And the other test I think most of us know about is the HbA1c. And HbA1c tells you the blood sugar in the past 3 months, but that is definitely a lot of times in the normal range for people who don't have high sugars. But insulin is something you will know is going high even when your sugars are normal, because your body is making more and more insulin and managing to keep your sugars normal. So you want to catch it at that point where your body is struggling to make insulin to manage your sugars. You don't want to catch it at a point where now your body has given up and it's not able to manage it. And now you have to take it from there and reverse the whole process. So I hope this wasn't too heavy on information. I want to end the session here. If you have any questions, you can write it in the chat box, also write to me, and I can probably include those in the next topic depending on what you like to hear. And about the fasting insulin test, let me say that I think anybody who is above 30, 35 or has a history in their family needs to do the fasting insulin test and A1C. Probably the A1C will come normal, but fasting insulin will give you an insight into what your metabolic health is. So, yeah. Yeah, D-Rise was the vitamin that we were talking about. Bone Shine are good vitamin D. Okay, I haven't heard of that. Uprise is one. Okay. My doctor has advised A to Z, good for multivitamin. Okay. Can you write comments about the timing of the class, the session? I prefer the session thrice a week. Okay, great. How to do fasting? Can we take honey, lemon water during fasting? No, we can't take honey and lemon water. You can take plain green tea, which basically has any food that you eat has to be extremely low in calories and carbs. So it has to be a black coffee without sugar, or you can put a little bit of stevia because it's a safe sweetener. It's a natural and safe sweetener. It has no bad effects on your body. So you can use that. But other than that, most of your drinks need to be watery. So you can take lemon water with salt. You can take black tea. You can take black coffee. If you have a few questions, we can take it right now, or you can just write the questions down and we can even, take those in the next session.
Yeah, sorry, Sonal, just one or two quick questions.
Okay.
At the cost of repeating, I missed the drift on this, this whole point that you talked about on the sugar craving and this whole insulin cycle where it dropped. Could you just, for my sake, just say it quickly again, of what happens
Okay.
and there we get craving again?
Yeah. So basically, if you eat a food which has high sugar or carbs, your body makes a load of insulin to manage that. And you
Okay.
are left with a lot of insulin in your blood at that point. So
Okay.
that extra insulin will also in some time give you a crash. And when your
Okay.
sugar crashes, you will immediately start looking for food, carbs, sugar, or something else. And
Okay.
the crash is something that is an extreme word that I'm using. So you may not really crash. But like I said, an example would be a vegetarian diet, which in India is a lot of times carb heavy. So
Okay, yeah,
when
no,
you're
that
eating
part I
that
get.
kind
Okay, so I understood this cycle. The other question I have is which you didn't cover, but I have a deficiency is vitamin B12. Any
of
suggestions on B12 basically?
uh, yeah, so people need to, if you have a B12 deficiency, you need to take B12. In my case too, I was eating a high protein diet, but I do have a B12 deficiency from time to time. And I do my blood test, like a whole lipid profile and everything, once or twice a year. Not everybody will do that. So I get to know where my B12 is. But if it is low, you need to take it because it helps, it affects everything from your
Okay.
mood, depression, feeling tired. So we need to take. There's another thing that I found out lately is that a lot of people, even if you take a B12 supplement, cannot absorb that better. Absorb that well, and that's what I want to bring forth, is that you need to be in tune with your own body. You need to be taking these tests from time to time to know what is happening. And every body is different, like I said. So in my case, people would say, you eat so much protein or you eat a lot of non-vegetarian food, why would you be deficient? And then I see my mother-in-law who doesn't eat as much, and she has like high levels of B12. So I take B12. A lot of people who do not absorb B12 well through a capsule, I have recently seen again from Dr. Gundry, I follow him really closely, is that he said there are what do you
Shots. We take shots actually.
so there are B12 shots also that don't help those people, because it
Oh,
seems there is this I think enzyme, something that they are missing at the end of their small intestine, which cannot take it in. So you have to take it sublingual. So it's something that you put it in your mouth and put it under your tongue, and you have to absorb it there. So
okay.
that I am sure is expensive. I looked it up. So probably the regular B12 methylcobalamin will be cheap. You try doing that. If that does not raise
No, no,
your
I'm taking
BP,
the shots and it's working basically. So
okay,
that's fine.
okay, so okay, great.
But I
If
had the
that is
def.
working, that's great. If that
Okay.
doesn't help, then this is the next level. Okay, all
Okay.
right. Thank you
Thank you.
everyone for being there and for being so patient. I again apologize for what happened technically, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.